Brown's going his own way.
He is going his own way, surprisingly. I was surprised by the news. We bring on Mike McAllister from 24/7 Sports. And, Mike, we've been debating here the last half hour about Malik and why did he leave. Help us make sense of it. Why do you think Malik Brown is hitting the portal?
Well, I've heard both of your arguments, and whether or not I agree with it, I think the one thing that we need to say is Paulie's argument that it has to do with playing time and players coming in and all of that, it's not an irrational argument, even if we disagree with whether or not we think that's the actual reason. I tend to lean more towards I think that he may have gotten some sort of inkling or perhaps informal offer on the NIL front, and he's deciding to go look elsewhere in order to, make some money. Now, here's the other thing to that. That can be sort of the straw that breaks the camel's back, and he could have been wrestling with it anyway, and it could be sort of the totality of all things involved. One, that he thinks he's got a better NIL opportunity somewhere else. Two, that he knows what's coming in that Donnie Freeman and a portal center. And so he thinks, well, let me go somewhere else where I can make more money and my potential minutes aren't quite as cloudy as they would be somewhere else. It could be a combination of all of those things. But I think all of us right now, we're sort of giving educated guesses. I haven't been told anything specifically from anyone directly involved with Malik to know this is definitively the answer.
All right, Mike, give me your educated guess. Do you think his minutes would have gone down next year?
No, not anything significant. I'm not saying, if he's playing 29.4 minutes and he plays 28.2 minutes next year, technically that's going down. I don't really consider that going down. He's basically playing he's basically on the floor for the same amount of time. Because the way that I kind of viewed it as, I think he was going to start at power forward. Donnie Freeman was going to be the primary forward off the bench, can play the three, but he'll play the four most of the time, can play the three if you decide to play bigger lineups. And that's kind of how I thought he was going to get his minutes. And then I thought, Malik would start at the 4 and then play at the 5, spelling whoever the transfer center that comes in is. And I know Naheem McLeod is there, but Naheem McLeod was starting last year, and Malik Brown was still playing more minutes in most games. So I still think it was going to be a situation where he was going to play some 5. That doesn't mean every single game he was going to play extensively there, but he was going to for a few minutes in most games and perhaps a little bit more minutes depending upon who the opponent is. So, yeah, I still think he was going to be in the 25 to 30 minute per game range, regardless of bringing in a portal center and Donnie Freeman coming in.
I almost sent Jordan over the edge yesterday when I said he would be a good fit at Clemson. I think Malik Brown plays their style of basketball.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong as far as the basketball fit. Here's the funny part about that, though. I remember when Clemson came here in the Joe Girard returns game, and after the game was over, Brad Brownell was gushing about Malik Brown, how great of a player he is, how he does all these things, and how he impacts the game in so many ways, and couldn't say enough good things about him, and he was, so tough for them to game plan against and all these things. And a lot of people, when I tweeted out his post-game comments, said, that's tampering. He's going to come after Malik Brown now. So, and I dismissed it at the time. I said coaches should be allowed to praise players from other teams without everyone thinking immediately it has to be tampering and that they're trying to put something in those guys' ear. So if he then ends up at Clemson, I mean, the conspiracy theories going back to those comments are just going to run wild. So it would almost be kind of interesting to see how that would happen and see everyone's heads explode as a result.
So last week we were talking about, who Syracuse should target in the portal. And Paulie and I were having the conversation. I said, that big dude at Colorado, he would be a good, that's the kind of guy I would want. A grown man who you can count on him. He's got some skills scoring the basketball. He's a big body. He's, again, a veteran guy. And then sure enough, Eddie Lampkin is on SU's radar. What can you tell us about where things stand with him? We're seeing reports that he's on campus visiting. Well, what's the latest on Eddie Lampkin?
So, first of all, he's also a very underrated passer, which I don't think people realize. They just see the 265, 270-pound, 6'11" frame and has a low post game and rebounds the ball pretty well and think, oh, that's a guy that I want. But he's also a really good passer. And I think people that are excited about the fact that he might be coming to Syracuse, or there's a possibility he comes to Syracuse, should consider that as well, that I think he can impact the offense more than just a low post game. That said, there was a lot of smoke yesterday about him in Syracuse, and it kind of came out of nowhere. But then he was on Instagram Live, and Naheem McLeod was in his comments giving the eyeball emoji, and Elijah Moore was posting to his Instagram story with some eyeball emojis, and it started to seem like there was more and more smoke. And then the report from Brent Axe today that he was on his way to visit Syracuse today. I don't know whether he's actually touched down. He's officially on campus yet, but he is supposed to be visiting today, according to Brent Axe's report. So I think that tells you that there's very serious interest on both sides. I don't think a kid from Texas who has offers from Texas and Houston, et cetera, is flying out to Syracuse just because. So a lot of times with these transfer recruitments, they have a feel as to where they want to go. They go visit that school, make sure it's not something crazy. The coaches aren't completely different than what you think they are, and then they commit before going on multiple visits. That happens in a lot of cases. So obviously, if you're a Syracuse fan, you're hoping that that's the case here as well.
Is there any other smoke in the portal, Mike, that we should be looking at?
Not really. I mean, not anything overly significant. I mean, they've been linked to a couple of guards. I know there was the one guard, Malik Mack, that was a former high school teammate of Donnie Freeman, so there was an obvious connection there. There was a report that Syracuse had reached out. I don't know that that's going to be a likely scenario where Syracuse ends up with him, although it would be a great fit. But, there's going to be more guards that are going to come in the portal, so I think Syracuse is going to keep monitoring and seeing what's available. They've been linked to the kid from Hofstra. I know people weren't blown away with his stats, but he's a guy that averaged 6.5 assists a game, if I have my numbers correct. Just a pure point guard, so a little bit different than what you had in Judah, not a score first by any means. So he would be different, but I think could be a good fit as a result. And I think with the loss of Malik Brown, they're going to have to look either through the portal or trying to see if they can grab someone at the JUCO level, grab someone maybe that can be a reserve forward off the bench and still give you, 20 minutes or so per game that can play the 3 or the 4 to give you a little bit of depth, because not having Malik not only takes either your starting 4 or your top reserve 4 off the table, but also someone who I still believe they were at least counting on or had the ability to turn to at center if needed, those are off the table. So if you can find someone else to give you a little bit more depth there, then you'd feel pretty good. It's tough to make that sell to a portal kid that, hey, come in and be a backup here, but eventually a lot of these spots will start filling up and you'll have the opportunity to try to get some of those guys.
And what are we to make of the silence from Judah Mintz? Do you think there's anything going on there, or what his plans are? You have any ideas?
I don't. Everything that I've heard has consistently been that he is not going to be at Syracuse next year, and so I haven't heard anything to change my mind on that. And I think maybe it was last week, but he had posted a video in his Instagram story about him working out somewhere in California with a guy that prepares people for the NBA draft. And I think if he was leaning towards or strongly considering coming back to college, whether at Syracuse or somewhere else, I think he'd probably be going to class. That's just my guess, but not out of state training for the NBA. So I still lean towards him turning pro, but we'll see how it all plays out. But I know, that I don't think there's anyone that is expecting he will be back at Syracuse next year.
All right, a couple of quick hitters before we let you go. Kennedy Perkins put her name in the portal. Isa Verjao says she's coming back. She's got 1 year of eligibility left and plans to use it. Just your thoughts on the news yesterday on those two players.
I think it's great for Isabel Varejao that she's coming back. Kind of stinks that she had to deal with some injuries this year, but I think when she's healthy, she's a really good player, and she's going to give Syracuse a big presence in the middle. That is big news for Syracuse, certainly, is that we know how much Coach Felicia Legette-Jack likes to attack the glass, and she can certainly help there. And her offensive game continued to expand as she went through the season last year, so I think they got the potential that she can continue to grow there. And we know the team is going to look a lot different without Deisha Fair, right? But I really was expecting that Kennedy Perkins was going to step into that starting point guard role and really play a lot of minutes next year and try to take her game to the next level, even though she's a different player than what Fair was. So I was a little bit surprised to hear that, but she's a good player. Certainly has that clutch change that came up several times this year. And, wish her nothing but the best. She was, I think she's a good player. I think she's a starting caliber player. And so, it just means that Syracuse is going to have to go look for a lead guard in the transfer portal, I think. One quick
football thing to touch on, the two kids from CBA committing to Fran Brown. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I talked to Matthew Hahn, the offensive line, last night, and I said, the downside to you committing is you can't get rid of Darian Williams. So if you thought you were done being teammates with him, unfortunately, you got to still deal with him. But Darian Williams, a wide receiver, is the number one player in New York State. Anytime you get the top player in your home state, that's a good thing for sure. And Matthew Hahn is really just an athletic lineman, moves very well, and I think has a lot of potential. I think he can play guard or tackle at the next level. But, this was not just a local kid. Neither of these were local kids that, Syracuse was really their only other Power 5 offer, and they were really only being looked at by Buffalo and Temple or something like that. These were guys with multiple Power 5 offers, the Pittsburghs and the Boston Colleges and the Rutgers and those types of schools. So good recruiting wins for Syracuse, and Fran Brown's got this thing rolling. I think they're 15th in the country last I checked in terms of their 2025 recruiting ranking. So doing really good work, and Matthew Hahn has not been evaluated yet by 24/7 Sports, but we'll see where he ends up once that evaluation process is done.
Mike, you do this a lot. You've been doing it a long time. If I told you Syracuse was going to be 15th in football recruiting at any point while you were doing this, you would have said I was crazy, right?
I would have said your only chance is you got like 20 commitments really early in the cycle before anyone else has like 2 or 3. I mean, that really was sort of where they were, because quantity does play a factor in the recruiting ranking. So if you have 8, 9, 10, and basically everyone else has 4 or 5, that's going to give you an advantage. But you still have to have some quality behind them. So yeah, it's crazy. I thought Syracuse could be a consistent top 40 recruiting class type of program. They haven't been that, but I thought they certainly could get there. And Fran Brown in a couple of months got him there in his first recruiting class, and in his first full recruiting class where he's there for the full cycle, he's looking at pushing a top 25, top 30 class. So anyone who doubted Fran Brown's recruiting acumen, the proof is in the pudding, and he certainly has given us that so far.
It doesn't stop amazing me that how much we talk about eyeball emojis. Is that the most impactful emoji of all the emojis? The eyeball emoji. I'm kidding, but right? I mean,
no, it is.
It's so versatile. Yes, and it can mean so many different things. So anyway.
Yes. It is, and I used to actually use it on when I was with SI before I made the move back to 24/7. I used it on my premium board to sort of hint that Syracuse is in a good spot with this kid. It was sort of like a crystal ball prediction.
Sure.
And the message boards at 24/7 don't support using that emoji from your keyboard, so you have to use the in-stock emojis they have built into the message board, which is a little unfortunate. But that emoji is certainly the most versatile, I think.
It certainly is.
Get your ear emojis ready,
Yeah, right.
because we're going to do the worst song next, Mike. So
There
get
you
your
go.
ear emojis ready.
Mike's tuning out. Mike, thank you for your time as always. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Mike McAllister from 24/7 Sports. With that, we'll hit a timeout.
Hear me out, Steve.
Yeah.
Emoji bracket next year.